I like to work the technology in places where others aren't, and develop stories that maybe utilize aspects of technology that aren't being using. I like to go for subjects that people are not recording or developing right now. So whichever way the river is flowing, I like to be swimming in the other direction. Canol's strange invasion had its beginnings, of course, with Casca elders, who had had the good fortune to meet in recording traditional knowledge for the Casca. One of the elders was Art John Sr. We were talking mostly about caribou, and he said, yeah, it was back in 1943, I guided the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers along one of our trails that passed through the Richardson Mountains to the Mackenzie. At the time, in 1943, he was in his early 30s. Wow, here's a part of the story that I never heard before. And Art is still alive, and he's the oldest man in the North right now at 103, I believe. Art was very active. He was still making hides, just fooling around, he called it. His wife had poor health, and she couldn't do it anymore, so Art took it over. So here he was, 92 at the time, and he had practically a factory for making moose hides into beautiful home-tanned moose hide leather. So the trick was to make it dynamic. It couldn't be just a sit-down story. But Art was, in the fall, he was hunting up the Canol Road. So a friend of mine, Tesloa Smith, and I rendezvoused with Art and convinced him to go with us for the length of the Canol Road as far as we could take our truck. And Art, along the way, told us bits and pieces of the story of the Canol and more. It turned into a discourse on the nature of propaganda, on government, on the resources, and Casca desires to receive some compensation for resources that come from their land. And in the end, Art finishes it all off with some commentary on money. He says, white man thought with money it would be easier. Indian lived without money a long time, did pretty good. And then he laughs, you know. It sort of was summative of a whole lot of things. And it was a real pleasure working with Art. And the result was Canol, Strange Invasion. Another aspect of Canol, Strange Invasion was propaganda, very important aspect. I invited Bechtel Corporation, Bechtel, very large, very powerful American corporation. They're the people that built the Canol Road and Pipeline. We're very strong on the Alaska Pipeline. They built the Hoover Dam and the Aswan Dam. And they also, with George Bush, they brought you the war in Iraq and its reconstruction. I invited Mr. Bechtel, who is the son of the original Bechtel that built the Canol Road, to do a tour with us and Art. He declined, citing ill health, but gave us a copy of a wonderful documentary. It was a documentary promoting Canol as the greatest project since the pyramids. That documentary, we didn't have to cut it much. We just had to take excerpts out of it. And people have an insight into what was the propaganda today. But by looking at it through the lens of 50 years of history, you could see really what the story was, and it was something very different. It turned out that Canol was actually one of the greatest boondoggles of World War II. What started off as a $13 or $14 million project in World War II dollars escalated to, some say, as high as $142 million. In the end, there was no more than a tanker full of oil reached the other end. Whitehorse had an oil refinery that people don't even know about, except for the spots of oil on the ground. And there was more oil left in the pipe and leaked out of it than actually made it to the other end. And all was left, along with the Studebakers on the Arctic tundra, the alpine tundra, between here and the Mackenzie. So I thought it was a wonderful story, one that isn't told The Alaska Highway's the great success story. No one really talks much about Canol, but I think that was really where the story was at.